My name is Kira, I'm 28 years old, and I'm about to tell you how my own family destroyed my life on Christmas morning. I came home to Springfield, Missouri, expecting wrapped presents under the tree and Grandma's famous sugar cookies cooling on the kitchen counter. Instead, I found 82-year-old Margaret sitting alone at our dining table, eating a sad microwave turkey dinner from a plastic tray. No decorations. No tree. No family. The handwritten note stuck to our refrigerator destroyed my world. Took your $10,000 tuition money for our Caribbean cruise. You can handle, Grandma. Back January 2nd. Love, Mom and Dad. $10,000. My final semester nursing school tuition. 3 months away from becoming an RN. Gone. Stolen by the people who were supposed to protect me. 4 years of 16-hour shifts at Walmart. 4 years of ramen noodles and thrift store clothes. 4 years of sacrificing everything to pay for school while my family lived like teenagers with no responsibilities. What would you do if your family betrayed you like this? Most people would cry. Most people would call a lawyer. But I'm not most people. And neither was Grandma Margaret. Because Grandma Margaret had a plan that would teach my family the most expensive lesson of their lives. Let me paint you the full picture of how twisted this betrayal really was. I'm Kira, 28 years old, 3 months away from graduating nursing school, a dream I'd been chasing since I was 16, and watched my grandfather die in a hospital where nobody seemed to care. That $10,000 they stole? It wasn't just money sitting in some savings account. It was a student loan I'd taken out specifically for my final semester. Tuition, books, clinical fees, everything I needed to cross the finish line and finally become a registered nurse. Without it, I couldn't graduate. 4 years of hell would be worthless. But here's where it gets sickening. My parents, Brian and Lisa, didn't just steal my future. They abandoned Grandma Margaret on Christmas Day. Left her with a note that basically said, "Kira will take care of you now." No discussion. No asking if I could handle it. Just dumped an 82-year-old woman on me like I was their personal caregiver service. And my siblings? Ethan, who's 26 and still lives in Mom and Dad's basement, and Chloe, who's 24 and has never held a job longer than 3 months. They went along with it. Packed their bags and flew to paradise while I stared at that devastating note. "They said you wouldn't mind," Margaret whispered, her hands shaking as she tried to cut the rubbery turkey. "Said you're good with money and responsible." Responsible? That word hit me like a slap. I'd always been the responsible one. The one who worked double shifts to pay my own way through school while they partied. The one who loaned Ethan $800 last year when he got fired from Pizza Hut. Money I never saw again. The one who let Chloe borrow my car for just a weekend and got it back with a dented bumper and empty gas tank. I was their ATM, their safety net, their backup plan, but never their daughter, never their sister. Sitting in that cold, empty house with Margaret, the truth crashed over me like ice water. This wasn't the first time. This was just the biggest, boldest theft in a pattern that went back years. Remember that college fund my grandparents left me when I was 18? Gone. Brian and Lisa spent it on a hot tub they used twice before it broke. Remember when I saved up $3,000 for a reliable car so I could drive to clinical rotations? They borrowed it for emergency home repairs that turned out to be a vacation to Branson. Every time I trusted them, they took advantage. Every time I succeeded, they found a way to drag me back down. "How long have they been doing this to you?" I asked Margaret, watching her struggle with that pathetic excuse for a Christmas dinner. Her eyes filled with tears. "Honey, they cleaned out my checking account last month. Said it was for house repairs, but..." She gestured around the peeling wallpaper and broken cabinet door that had been hanging crooked for 2 years. My stomach dropped. They weren't just stealing from me. They were stealing from an 82-year-old woman who trusted them. But this is where the story takes a turn nobody, including me, saw coming. Margaret set down her plastic fork and looked at me with eyes that suddenly seemed a lot sharper than I remembered. "Kira, sweetheart," she said quietly, "I think it's time we had a real conversation." But what she told me next changed everything I thought I knew about my helpless grandmother. "I've been documenting everything," Margaret said, her voice steady now. "Every lie, every theft, every broken promise." She walked to her bedroom with surprising steadiness and returned carrying a shoebox I'd never seen before. Inside were bank statements, receipts, handwritten notes, and printed emails going back 3 years. My jaw dropped as she spread them across the kitchen table like evidence at a crime scene. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a bank statement from October. "They told me the furnace needed emergency repairs. Cost me $2,400. But look here." She showed me her checkbook register. Same day they deposited my money, they posted vacation photos from Kansas City on Facebook. The vacation I wasn't invited to. The one where Ethan bought a new gaming laptop and Chloe got those expensive highlights she'd been wanting. "Margaret, why didn't you tell me?" I whispered. "Because I knew you'd try to fix it. You always try to fix everything, honey. But some people can't be fixed. They can only be stopped." She pulled out more evidence. Credit card statements showing luxury purchases made the same week they claimed they couldn't afford groceries. Hotel receipts from weekend getaways while I was working overtime to pay for my NCLEX exam prep. But the worst discovery was a printed email thread between my parents and siblings. "Found this on Brian's laptop when I was helping him organize files," Margaret said with air quotes. "Read it." The subject line made me sick. "Kira's money situation. Brian to Lisa. She's got that loan money coming in next month. Think we can get her to loan us some for the cruise? Lisa to Brian. She'll never say no. She's too guilty about not helping more with mom." Ethan chiming in. "Just take it. She'll figure something out. She always does." Chloe's response. "Agree. She's smart with money. She'll probably get another loan or something." They weren't just stealing from me. They were planning it, calculating it, betting on my love for them to keep me silent. "How long have you known about this?" I asked, my hands trembling as I read their casual discussion of destroying my future. 6 months. "But Kira, this goes back much further than you realize." Margaret pulled out a manila folder I recognized. My high school graduation photos were paperclipped to the front. "Remember when you graduated valedictorian? You had that full scholarship to State University." "Yeah, but I couldn't accept it because they convinced you I needed round-the-clock care after my hip surgery. Remember? Told you I was too fragile to be alone." The memory hit me like a punch. I'd given up a full ride to stay home and help Margaret recover. Worked at Walmart instead, planning to go to community college part-time. "Margaret, you needed help. The doctor said. The doctor said I needed physical therapy twice a week for 6 weeks. That's it." Her voice got harder. "But your parents saw an opportunity. If you stayed home, you'd be earning money they could borrow. If you went away to college, you'd be independent." She showed me medical records I'd never seen. Margaret's recovery was textbook normal. No complications. No need for full-time care. They'd lied to keep me trapped. "But that's not even the worst part," Margaret continued. "Show me your credit report, sweetheart." "My credit report? Why would I?" Just humor an old woman. I pulled it up on my phone, expecting to see my student loans and one small credit card I kept for emergencies. Instead, I saw accounts I'd never opened. Credit cards maxed out in my name. A car loan for a vehicle I'd never seen. A personal loan for $5,000 I'd definitely never applied for. My credit score was destroyed. "How is this possible?" I whispered. Margaret reached into the shoebox one more time and pulled out photocopies of documents. Applications for credit cards and loans, all with my social security number and forged signatures that looked close enough to mine to fool a bank. "Your mother's been practicing your signature for years." I watched her do it at the kitchen table, thinking she was just doodling. The room started spinning. They hadn't just stolen my tuition money, they'd stolen my entire financial identity. "Margaret, I need to call the police. This is fraud. Identity theft. They could go to prison." "And then what?" she asked quietly. "You think they'll pay you back from jail? You think you'll get your tuition money in time for spring semester?" She was right. By the time the legal system sorted this out, I'd have missed my graduation deadline. 4 years of sacrifice would be worthless. "There has to be something we can do," I said, fighting back tears of rage and helplessness. "Oh, there is." Margaret's eyes got that sharp look again. "But it requires you to stop thinking like their victim and start thinking like their opponent." She started gathering the evidence, organizing it into neat piles. "Kira, honey, what do you know about your grandmother's life before you were born? You were a teacher. Retired when I was little. I was a high school principal. For 32 years. You know what principals get really good at?" I shook my head. "Dealing with bullies. And the thing about bullies, whether they're teenagers or grown adults stealing from their own family, is they only understand one language. She stood up, suddenly looking more formidable than I'd ever seen her. Consequences. Margaret walked to her purse and pulled out a small address book, the kind with actual paper pages that older people still use. I may be 82, but I'm not helpless. I still have friends in this town. Important friends. And after watching what your family has done to both of us, I've been making some phone calls. She flipped through the pages, showing me names and numbers. My neighbor Patricia, retired family court judge. My church friend Ruth, 30 years as a social worker specializing in elder abuse. My bridge partner Dolores, her son is the best locksmith in Springfield. A plan was forming in her eyes. A plan that made me both terrified and thrilled. But we only have 5 days before they come back from their paradise vacation. 5 days to teach them that actions have consequences. She looked directly at me. The question is, are you ready to stop being their victim? That's when Grandma Margaret said something that changed everything. Kira, I'm going to tell you something I've never admitted to anyone, Margaret said, settling back into her chair with the confidence of someone who just revealed their hand in a poker game. Your family thinks I'm a helpless old woman they can steal from. But helpless women don't survive 32 years as a high school principal dealing with entitled teenagers and their even more entitled parents. She opened her address book to a page filled with neat handwriting. Patricia Hendricks, retired family court judge. We've been friends since 1987. She's the one who helped me gather all this evidence legally. Everything in this box? Admissible in court. My eyes widened. You've been building a legal case? For 6 months. Every forged signature, every fraudulent account, every lie they told you about my medical needs, Patricia helped me document it all properly. She flipped to another page. Ruth Morrison, 3 decades as a social worker specializing in elder financial abuse. She's already reviewed your parents' pattern of behavior. In her professional opinion, this constitutes a clear case of systematic family exploitation. Margaret's voice grew stronger with each revelation. But my favorite contact is Dolores Patterson. Sweet little church lady who makes the best apple pie in Springfield. Her son Tommy owns Patterson Security and Locksmith, the company that handles locks for half the banks in town. The pieces started clicking together in my mind. Margaret, what exactly are you planning? She smiled. Not the sweet, grandmother smile I was used to, but something sharper. More calculating. Operation Consequence. That's what Patricia and I call it. She pulled out a legal pad covered in her neat handwriting. A timeline. A strategy. A complete battle plan. Day 1, tomorrow, Tommy changes all the locks on this house. New keys for you, and me only. When your family returns from their cruise, they'll find themselves locked out of the home they've been using as their personal ATM. But this is their house too. Actually, it's not. Margaret pulled out another document. This house has been in my name since your grandfather died. I let them live here out of kindness, not obligation. She continued down her list. Day 2. Ruth files an official elder abuse report with social services. Not to get them arrested, but to create a paper trail that proves this is an ongoing pattern. Day 3. Patricia helps us draft legally binding repayment agreements. Not requests. Contracts. With payment schedules, interest, and consequences for default. My head was spinning. Margaret, this is incredible, but how do we make them sign anything? Day 4, we secure everything valuable in a safe deposit box. Your grandfather's coin collection, my jewelry, the silver set, anything they might try to steal or sell in desperation. And Day 5. Margaret's smile grew wider. Day 5 is when they come home to find the locks changed, their access to easy money cut off, and an invitation to meet us at the Starbucks on Campbell Street to discuss terms. She pulled out her phone and showed me a group text thread I'd never seen before. My Golden Girls network, Patricia, Ruth, Dolores, and 3 other retired professional women who've been watching your family's behavior for years. We meet for coffee every Wednesday, and honey, we've been planning this intervention longer than you know. The text thread was incredible. These sweet old ladies had been conducting surveillance, like private detectives. Patricia saw Brian at the casino again Tuesday. Lost at least $200 at the slots. Ruth, Lisa spent $150 at Target yesterday. Showed me her bargains, all name brand makeup and clothes. Dolores, Tommy drove past their house. Saw them loading suitcases. Left poor Margaret's mail piling up. You've been watching them? We've been protecting our interests. And you, sweetheart, you just didn't know it yet. Margaret stood and walked to her bedroom window, pulling back the curtain to reveal Mrs. Patterson across the street watering her flowers. Dolores has been keeping an eye on things while they're gone, making sure nobody tries to break in or cause trouble. She pointed to another house down the block. Ruth lives there. She's been documenting every time your parents have loud fights about money, every time they come home drunk from their nights out while you're working double shifts. The scope of this operation was breathtaking. But here's the beautiful part, Margaret continued. Everything we're doing is completely legal. We're not stealing anything. We're securing our own property. We're not lying, we're documenting facts. We're not threatening anyone, we're offering them a chance to make things right. She pulled out one final document that made my breath catch. A temporary loan agreement. I'm prepared to loan you the $10,000 for your tuition, to be repaid after you graduate and start working as an RN. Tears started flowing down my face. Margaret, I can't take your money. It's not charity, honey. It's an investment. In your future, and in teaching your family that there are people in this world who keep their promises. She sat back down and took my hands. But here's what I need you to understand. This plan only works if you're ready to stop being their victim, ready to set boundaries, ready to demand respect instead of begging for love. The woman sitting across from me wasn't the frail grandmother I thought I knew. This was a strategist, a leader, someone who'd spent decades dealing with difficult people and had finally decided to use those skills to protect her granddaughter. Real love includes boundaries and accountability, she said firmly. What your parents and siblings have been doing to us isn't love, it's exploitation disguised as family loyalty. She opened her address book one more time. I have one more friend I haven't mentioned. Judge Hamilton retired, but he still handles private arbitration cases. If your family refuses to sign our repayment agreements voluntarily, Patricia can have this case in front of him within 48 hours. The power dynamic in my family was about to flip completely upside down. So, what do you say, Kira? Ready to stop being their emergency fund and start being their wake-up call? But we only had 5 days before they returned from paradise. The next morning, reality hit me like a freight train. I woke up on Margaret's couch, couldn't bear to sleep in my childhood bedroom knowing how my family had betrayed me, and the first thing I saw was my nursing school portal open on my laptop. Final tuition payment due, January 15th. No extensions. 12 days away. If I didn't pay, I'd be dropped from the program automatically. 4 years of hell for nothing. My hands shook as I calculated the timeline. My family would return in 4 days. Even if Margaret's plan worked perfectly, even if they signed repayment agreements immediately, there was no way they'd have $10,000 in time. The cruise alone probably cost them $8,000. Plus their daily spending, excursions, drinks, they were probably maxed out on credit cards and completely broke. Having second thoughts? Margaret asked, appearing in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. Margaret, what if this doesn't work? What if they refuse to sign anything? What if they just disappear when they realize we've changed the locks? She sat beside me, her expression serious. Then we go to Plan B. Patricia files criminal charges for identity theft and elder abuse. Ruth reports them to social services. And you take out additional student loans to finish school. I can't get more loans. My credit is destroyed, remember? The weight of that reality crushed down on me. Even if we proved the fraud, even if we got them arrested, cleaning up my credit would take months or years. Too late for graduation. There's something else, I whispered. I keep thinking about Christmases when I was little. Dad teaching me to ride a bike. Mom braiding my hair for school pictures. Were they always this selfish? Was I just too young to see it? Margaret's face softened. Honey, people aren't born evil. But somewhere along the way, your parents learned that taking was easier than earning. And taking from family was easiest of all. She showed me an old photo of my parents from their wedding day. Young, smiling, full of hope. I remember when they started dating. Brian worked construction, saved every penny for their future. Lisa had a job at the bank, talked about buying a house someday. What happened? Life got hard. Brian hurt his back. Couldn't do construction anymore. Lisa got pregnant with Ethan sooner than they planned. Instead of adapting, they started looking for shortcuts, borrowing money they couldn't repay, making promises they wouldn't keep. She put the photo away. By the time you were born, they'd learned that playing the victim was more profitable than taking responsibility. And you, sweet girl, were such an easy target. The doorbell rang, interrupting my spiral of self-doubt. Margaret opened it to reveal a stocky man in his 50s carrying a toolbox. Tommy Patterson, he introduced himself. Mom sent me to change your locks. Watching him work, I felt the point of no return approaching. Once those locks were changed, there was no pretending this was just a family misunderstanding. This was war. You sure about this? Tommy asked, installing the final deadbolt. Once I'm done, anybody without these new keys is staying outside until you decide otherwise. I looked at Margaret. At 82, she was risking her relationship with her son and daughter-in-law. If this went wrong, she might never see Brian, Lisa, Ethan, or Chloe again. Margaret, maybe we should try talking to them first. Give them a chance to explain. Explain what? She snapped, showing more anger than I'd ever seen from her. Explain why they stole from you? Explain why they abandoned me on Christmas? Explain why they've been forging her signature for years. She pulled out her phone and showed me their social media posts from the cruise. Brian lounging by the pool, living our best life. Sometimes you just have to treat yourself. Lisa at a fancy restaurant, celebrating family. Money can't buy happiness, but it sure helps. Ethan jet skiing. Thanks Mom and Dad for the best Christmas ever. Chloe getting a massage. Spa day. I deserve this after such a hard year. Not one mention of the granddaughter they'd abandoned. Not one thought about the money they'd stolen. They're not sorry, Kira. They're not planning to make this right. They're celebrating. The anger I'd been suppressing finally erupted. You're right. Change the locks. But as Tommy packed up his tools, doubt crept back in. What if I'm wrong about this? What if confronting them destroys our family forever? Honey, Margaret said gently, they already destroyed it. We're just refusing to pretend otherwise anymore. That afternoon, Margaret's phone rang. Ruth Morrison, the social worker. I've reviewed all the documentation, Ruth said on speakerphone. This is one of the clearest cases of family financial abuse I've seen. Multiple victims, systematic exploitation, identity theft. If you want to press charges, the evidence is overwhelming. But I could hear hesitation in her voice. But criminal charges mean jail time. Prison records. Ethan and Chloe could lose any chance at decent jobs. Brian and Lisa would never recover financially. The weight of that decision sat heavy on my chest. Did I want revenge or did I want justice? Were they the same thing? There's another issue, Ruth continued. Margaret, your blood pressure has been elevated during our meetings. The stress of this situation is affecting your health. I looked at Margaret, really looked at her. Despite her fierce planning and determination, she looked exhausted. Older than her 82 years. What if this kills her? I whispered after Ruth hung up. What if doing nothing kills me faster? Margaret replied. Kira, I've watched your family steal your dreams for 10 years. I've let them steal from me because I was afraid of losing them. But you know what I realized? She took my hands. I already lost them. The moment they decided money was more important than family, I lost them. Now I'm just trying to save you. My phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Bringing you something special from the islands. Something special. Probably a $5 souvenir bought with my stolen tuition money. The morning they were supposed to return, everything went wrong. The morning they were supposed to return, everything went wrong. I woke up at 5 a.m. to Margaret gasping for breath in the next room. Margaret. I rushed to her bedside, finding her clutching her chest, her face pale and sweaty. Can't breathe, she whispered. My nursing training kicked in. I checked her pulse, rapid and irregular. Blood pressure through the roof. All the signs of a cardiac event brought on by stress. We need to get you to the hospital, I said, reaching for my phone to call 911.
No.
Her grip on my wrist was surprisingly strong. Not today. Today we finish this. Margaret, you could be having a heart attack. I'm having an anxiety attack. Big difference. She sat up slowly, color returning to her cheeks. I've had them before. Usually when I'm about to do something that scares me. She looked at the clock. 5:17 a.m. Tommy will be here in 43 minutes to make sure the locks are working properly. Patricia arrives at 7 to review our legal documents one final time. Ruth comes at 8 to witness everything for her report. Despite her health scare, Margaret's plan was proceeding like clockwork. But I was falling apart. What if they bring police? What if they claim we're holding them hostage in their own home? This isn't their home anymore, Margaret said firmly. As of yesterday, I officially removed Brian and Lisa from the deed. Patricia filed the paperwork with the county clerk. They're now former tenants with no legal right to enter this property without permission. She showed me the official documents. Margaret had been even more thorough than I'd realized. But there's something else I need to tell you before they arrive. She pulled out a manila envelope I hadn't seen before. I hired a private investigator. My jaw dropped. A what? Peterson Investigations. My friend Dolores recommended him. I needed to know exactly what we were dealing with. She opened the envelope, revealing photos, financial records, and a detailed report. Your family didn't just steal from us, Kira. They've been running scams on half the neighborhood. The photos showed Brian at the casino 3 nights a week, not just occasionally. Lisa shopping at high-end stores while claiming poverty. Ethan selling items on Facebook Marketplace that look suspiciously like things I remembered from Margaret's house. But this is the smoking gun, Margaret said, pulling out bank statements. They have a secret joint account. Look at the deposits. The numbers made me sick. Thousands of dollars over the past year from sources I couldn't identify. Insurance fraud, Margaret explained. 3 fake injury claims in 18 months. A fender bender that never happened. A slip and fall at Walmart that was completely staged. A workers' compensation claim for a back injury that miraculously healed when they thought nobody was watching. The private investigator's report was damning. My family weren't just selfish, they were professional grifters. Margaret, this changes everything. If they're committing insurance fraud, we could all get in trouble for not reporting it. Already handled. The insurance companies will receive anonymous tips next week, after we've secured our own justice. At 6:15 a.m., my phone started buzzing with texts. Lisa, flight delayed. Won't be home until afternoon. Brian, can't wait to see everyone. Ethan, bring me something good for dinner, sis. Chloe, hope Grandma wasn't too much trouble. Face blowing a kiss. The casual entitlement in their messages made my blood boil. At exactly 7 a.m., Patricia Hendricks knocked on the door. Even retired, she carried herself with the authority of someone who'd spent decades making life-changing decisions from the bench. How are we feeling about today? She asked, spreading legal documents across Margaret's dining table. Terrified, I admitted. Good. That means you understand the gravity of what we're doing. She organized the papers into neat stacks. These repayment agreements are legally binding contracts. Once they sign, they're committed to a payment schedule with real consequences for default. She showed me the terms. $10,000 plus interest, paid back over 2 years at $500 per month. Failure to make payments would result in wage garnishment, asset seizure, and criminal charges for the identity theft. What if they refuse to sign? Then we proceed directly to criminal charges. With the evidence we have, they'll face felony fraud charges, elder abuse charges, and federal identity theft charges. They'd be looking at 5 to 10 years in federal prison. The weight of that power felt terrifying. Ruth Morrison arrived at 8 a.m. with her own briefcase full of documentation. I've completed my assessment, she announced. This family exhibits classic patterns of financial predators. They've systematically identified and exploited vulnerable targets, you as the responsible family member, Margaret as the elderly victim with assets. She pulled out psychological profiles that read like criminal case studies. Brian shows narcissistic personality traits with antisocial behavior patterns. Lisa demonstrates dependent personality disorder with manipulative tendencies. Both children exhibit learned helplessness combined with entitlement syndrome. You're saying they're actually mentally ill? I'm saying they've learned that victimizing their own family is an effective survival strategy. But mental illness doesn't excuse criminal behavior. At 10 a.m., Tommy Patterson returned to double-check the lock installation. All secure, he reported. These are commercial-grade deadbolts. The kind we install on jewelry stores. Nobody's getting in here without your permission. At 11:30 a.m., Margaret's phone rang. We're pulling into the driveway. Lisa's voice was cheerful, excited. Wait till you see all the presents we brought. I watched from Margaret's bedroom window as their rental car pulled up. Brian looked tan and relaxed. Lisa was wearing new jewelry. Ethan and Chloe climbed out laughing about something, carrying shopping bags from expensive stores. They walked to the front door, like they owned the world. Brian tried his key. Nothing. That's weird, I heard him say. He tried again, jiggling the handle. Lisa tried her key. Same result. Mom, Brian called through the door. Something's wrong with the locks. Margaret and I looked at each other. This was it. The point of no return. Kia. You in there? Chloe's voice sounded slightly concerned now. Margaret walked to the door, but didn't open it. We're here, she called through the wood. But we need to talk first. Open the door, Mom, Brian said, his tone shifting from confusion to irritation. It's cold out here. I'll open the door when you're ready to have an honest conversation about the money you stole. Silence. Then Lisa's voice, shrill with fake indignation. What money? What are you talking about? Margaret opened the door just wide enough to hand Brian a single piece of paper. Starbucks on Campbell Street. 2 o'clock. Come alone, all 4 of you. We have some things to discuss. Mom, this is ridiculous. Just let us in. Margaret closed the door firmly. Through the window, I watched their shocked faces as they read the paper. It contained one line. We know about the $10,000, the identity theft, and the insurance fraud. Come ready to make this right. But they had no idea what was waiting for them at Starbucks. At 1:45 p.m., Margaret and I walked into the Starbucks on Campbell Street like we were entering a courtroom. Patricia Hendricks was already there, sitting at a corner table with her briefcase open, wearing the same no-nonsense expression she'd probably used to sentence criminals for 30 years. Ruth Morrison sat beside her with a thick folder of documentation. We'd chosen this location strategically, public enough that my family couldn't cause a scene, but quiet enough for serious conversation. Plus, the afternoon crowd would provide witnesses if things got ugly. At exactly 2 p.m., Brian pushed through the door first, his vacation tan making him look ridiculous in his wrinkled t-shirt that read, Paradise Found. Lisa followed, clutching a designer purse I'd never seen before, probably bought with my tuition money. Ethan slouched behind them, still wearing flip-flops despite the December weather, while Chloe brought up the rear, frantically texting someone. They spotted us immediately and marched over with the entitled confidence of people who never faced real consequences. What the hell is this about? Brian demanded, his voice loud enough to turn heads. Why are the locks changed? Who are these people? Sit down, Margaret said calmly, gesturing to the empty chairs across from us. I'm not sitting anywhere until you explain why. Seat. Down. Patricia's voice carried the authority of someone who'd controlled courtrooms for decades. Now. Something in her tone made Brian's bluster evaporate. They sat. Margaret placed the shoebox of evidence on the table between us. Let's start with this, she said, pulling out the printed email thread about my money situation. Lisa's face went white as she recognized her own words. Where did you get that? From Brian's laptop. The one I was helping him organize. Margaret's voice was ice cold. Very interesting family discussion about stealing your daughter's tuition money. We didn't steal anything, Brian blustered. It was a loan. Show me the loan paperwork, Patricia interrupted. Show me where Kira signed an agreement to lend you $10,000. Silence. Show me where you asked permission before taking money that wasn't yours, Ruth added. More silence. Chloe finally spoke up, her voice small. We were going to pay it back. When? I asked, finding my voice for the first time. When exactly were you planning to pay back $10,000? We figured something out, Ethan mumbled. Margaret laughed, a sound with zero warmth. Like you figured out how to pay back the $800 Kira loaned you last year? Or the $3,000 you borrowed for fake home repairs? Or the money you've been stealing from my checking account? She pulled out bank statements, showing a clear pattern of theft going back 2 years. But let's talk about something even more interesting, Patricia said, opening her briefcase. Identity theft is a federal crime. Forging someone's signature to open credit accounts carries a minimum sentence of 2 years in federal prison. She spread out copies of the fraudulent credit applications. These signatures were analyzed by a handwriting expert. Lisa, you're quite talented at forgery, but not perfect. The FBI has forensic specialists who can prove these aren't Kira's signatures. Lisa started crying. We were desperate. You don't understand. Desperate enough to destroy your daughter's credit? Desperate enough to risk her entire future? Ruth's professional demeanor cracked slightly, revealing genuine disgust. I've worked with family abuse cases for 30 years, and this level of systematic exploitation is criminal. Brian tried a different approach. Look, we made mistakes, but we're family. We can work this out. Yes, we can, Margaret interrupted. By signing these. Patricia placed 4 identical documents on the table. Legal repayment agreements. Each of you will sign a contract agreeing to repay $2,500 plus interest over 18 months. That's roughly $150 per month per person. Miss a payment, and we file criminal charges immediately. We don't have jobs that pay enough for that, Ethan protested. Then get better jobs, I said, my voice stronger now. I worked 16-hour days to pay for school. You can work 8-hour days to pay for your crimes.
Crime.
Chloe's voice cracked. We're not criminals. Ruth pulled out a thick folder. Insurance fraud. 3 fake claims totaling $12,000 in fraudulent payouts. That's a felony in Missouri. The color drained from Brian's face. How do you know about that? Because, unlike you, we do our homework before we act, Margaret said. Patricia's investigator documented everything. The staged car accident. The fake slip and fall. The workers' compensation claim for an injury that never happened. She leaned forward. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign these repayment agreements. You're going to get real jobs and make real payments. And you're going to stop treating your family like a personal bank. And if we refuse? Lisa asked, still crying. Then tomorrow morning, Patricia files criminal charges. Ruth reports the elder abuse. The insurance companies receive anonymous tips about your fraud, and you'll all be arrested before the weekend is over. The silence stretched for nearly a minute. My family looked at each other, having silent conversations with their eyes. Finally, Brian spoke. This is blackmail. No, Patricia corrected. This is justice. Blackmail would be demanding money we weren't owed. This is simply offering you a choice. Make restitution voluntarily, or make it through the court system. We need time to think about this, Lisa said. You have 5 minutes, Margaret replied, checking her watch. Because at 2:30, I'm calling Peterson Investigations to release their report to the authorities. The power in the room had shifted completely. My family, the people who'd controlled my life through guilt and manipulation for years, were suddenly the ones begging for mercy. This isn't fair, Ethan whined. We never meant for things to go this far. Fair? I stood up, feeling power I'd never experienced before. Was it fair when you destroyed my credit? Was it fair when you stole Grandma's savings? Was it fair when you gambled my future on a vacation? I pulled out my phone and showed them my nursing school portal. I have 13 days to pay $10,000 or lose my degree. 13 days to salvage 4 years of work. You took that money knowing it would destroy my future, and you did it anyway. I looked each of them in the eye. You made your choice. Now live with the consequences. Brian picked up his pen first. If we sign this, the criminal charges go away? If you sign this and make every payment on time for 18 months, we won't press charges, Patricia clarified. Miss even one payment and the deal is void. One by one, they signed. Brian first, his hand shaking slightly. Then Lisa, still crying. Ethan signed with the sullen resentment of a teenager grounded for breaking curfew. Chloe was last, her signature barely legible through her tears. Smart choice, Margaret said, collecting the signed agreements. Patricia will file these with the court tomorrow, making them legally enforceable. As my family prepared to leave, looking defeated and confused, Brian turned back. Where are we supposed to live? You changed the locks. Figure it out, Margaret replied. The same way you figured out how to steal from your daughter. But Mom, you stopped being my son the day you decided money was more important than family. Now you're just someone who owes me money. But they had no idea what was waiting for them at Starbucks. Actually, they did now. And they'd never see our family the same way again. 3 weeks later, I was sitting in my advanced pharmacology class when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. First payment made. $600. Thank you for giving us a chance to make this right. Brian. Margaret had loaned me the $10,000 the day after our Starbucks confrontation with a simple handwritten agreement to be repaid after graduation, no interest, no pressure. But the real transformation wasn't financial, it was psychological. For the first time in my adult life, I wasn't responsible for everyone else's problems. I wasn't the family ATM. I wasn't the backup plan for people who refused to plan. I was just Kira, a nursing student. 3 months from graduation. The changes started immediately. Within a week of signing those agreements, Brian had gotten a job at a construction supply company. Lisa started working part-time at the bank where she'd worked years ago. Ethan, forced to face reality, without his parents' financial safety net, finally moved out and got a job at a call center. Chloe was the holdout. She spent the first 2 weeks couch surfing and complaining to anyone who'd listen about how unfair her situation was. But when her friends got tired of supporting her drama, she swallowed her pride and got hired as a waitress at Applebee's. Subscribe now, because you need to see how completely this transformed our family dynamics. The most shocking change was in how they treated me. Before, every conversation included subtle hints about money they needed or favors I should do. Now, they approached me carefully, respectfully, like they finally understood I had boundaries they couldn't cross. Hey, Kira. Ethan called one Tuesday evening when I was leaving clinical rotations. I know I don't have the right to ask, but could you help me understand how to budget better? I'm making payments, but I'm barely scraping by. This was the same person who used to demand I loan him money for video games. Sure, I said. But first, tell me why you want to change. Because living paycheck to paycheck sucks. And because... He paused, struggling with words. Because I realized I never learned how to be an adult. Mom and Dad never taught us. They just taught us to take. 3 weeks later, Chloe asked if she could come to my apartment to talk. I owe you more than money, she said, sitting nervously on my couch. I owe you an apology. And an explanation, even though there's no excuse. She told me about growing up watching our parents manipulate situations to avoid responsibility. How they taught her that other people's success was somehow unfair to her. How they convinced her that taking from family wasn't really stealing because family shares everything. I never learned to earn things, she admitted. I only learned to take things. And I took from you because you always let me. The conversation lasted 4 hours. By the end, we were both crying, but for different reasons than we'd cried that Christmas morning. Margaret's transformation was equally dramatic. Within a month, she'd become the neighborhood's unofficial elder advocate, helping other seniors document financial abuse and connect with legal resources. Turns out there are a lot of families like ours, she told me over coffee at her kitchen table, the same table where we'd planned Operation Consequence. Ruth says elder financial abuse by family members is epidemic, but most people are too ashamed to report it. She'd started a support group that met at the community center every Thursday. 8 other grandparents who'd been stolen from by their own children and grandchildren. We call ourselves the Silver Justice League, Margaret said with a grin. Patricia provides legal advice, Ruth handles the social work side, and I coordinate everything else. But the biggest change was in me. For years, I'd confused being needed with being loved. I thought if I could just give enough, sacrifice enough, be responsible enough, my family would appreciate me. Instead, I learned that love without boundaries isn't love, it's enablement. The nursing program that had felt impossible to finish suddenly became manageable. Without the constant stress of family drama and financial crises, my grades actually improved. I passed my NCLEX exam on the first try and landed a job in the ICU at Springfield Regional Medical Center. At my graduation ceremony, my entire family showed up. But this time, they came as supporters, not beneficiaries. Brian, who'd been making his payments religiously for 6 months, approached me after the ceremony. I know I don't deserve to say this, he said quietly, but I'm proud of you. And I'm sorry it took losing you to make me grow up. You didn't lose me, I replied. You just had to start treating me like family instead of a resource. 6 months later, Lisa sent me a text that made me laugh out loud. Can you help me understand how student loans work? I'm thinking about going back to school. The woman who'd stolen my education money was asking for help getting her own education. The cycle was finally broken. But here's what I learned about family betrayal that nobody talks about. Sometimes the people who hurt you most are also the people most capable of change. Not because they're fundamentally good, but because losing what they took for granted forces them to grow up. My family learned that respect isn't automatically given, it's earned through consistent actions. And I learned that love means helping people become better, even when that help looks like consequences. 2 years later, my family had paid back every penny of that stolen $10,000. But more importantly, they'd paid back something even more valuable, my trust in what family could actually mean. Brian now manages a construction crew and hasn't gambled in 18 months. Lisa finished her associate's degree and works full-time at a credit union, helping people avoid the financial mistakes she once made. Ethan moved into his own apartment and started dating someone who doesn't tolerate his old entitled attitude. And Chloe? She's 6 months away from finishing cosmetology school, paying her own way. Margaret still lives in the house on Maple Street, but now it's full of laughter again. Real laughter, not the fake kind we used to perform to avoid talking about money. We have Sunday dinners now. Everyone contributes something: groceries, cooking, cleanup. Nobody expects to be taken care of. Nobody feels taken advantage of. The difference is respect. Here's what I want you to understand. Family betrayal isn't rare. It's epidemic. Millions of people right now are being financially abused by relatives who claim to love them. If you're watching this and thinking about someone in your family who treats you like an ATM, you're not alone. And you're not powerless. But here's my question for you. Has your family ever betrayed you like this? Have you ever been the responsible one while everyone else took advantage? Drop your story in the comments. Tell me what happened. Because trust me, after 2 years of reading messages from people just like us, I can tell you that speaking up is the first step toward taking your power back. If you're not ready to subscribe yet, comment and tell me why. What's holding you back from joining a community of people who understand exactly what you're going through? Because next, I'm sharing another story that'll make this one look tame. Sometimes the people closest to you are the ones you need to watch most carefully.